Young Turks, Jake Ugranic is spared with you guys. What is this? We're back in our home studios because we both got sick, but not COVID. Everybody calm down, not COVID.
Toot.
It was not during the COVID days. You don't toot during the COVID days. Anyway, that spreads it around. Anyways, we both tested negative. I actually got sick for a very obvious reason, booster shot. And so everything's great. I feel terrific today. The booster shot works. As you'll see in the bonus episode at the end for the members, there are some people claiming the vaccines don't quite work. That's because they're liars. And they also claim to be on the left, but that's also because they're liars. Okay, that's gonna be fun for the members. And then now that's a new thing about liars. Okay, so we do have a lot of news for you guys. As usual, a lot of it is disastrous, but we will tell it with a smile on our face, although not all the time. And so certainly not in the first story. All right, that brings us to the top newscaster in the country, Annika Spear.
All right, well, we begin with the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse, so let's get right to it. The prosecution's case against Kyle Rittenhouse in the shooting of 3 individuals in Kenosha, Wisconsin is not looking good. Now, of course, that shooting, which took place last year when he was 17 years old, resulted in 2 individuals dying, 1 individual being wounded. And the person who was shot and wounded did testify on the stand recently. His name is Gage Grosskreutz. And he admitted on the stand that he was in fact in possession of a firearm, which he had unholstered in response to Kyle Rittenhouse because he believed that Kyle Rittenhouse was an active shooter. Now, this is an important detail in the trial because the defense claims that Kyle Rittenhouse was acting in self-defense when he fired his weapon. I want to be clear that this moment between Grosskreutz and Rittenhouse happened after Rittenhouse had fatally shot Joseph Rosenbaum. That was an individual who was chasing after him into a parking lot. We covered that in more detail earlier on the show. But for now, let's focus on what happened in the aftermath following the shooting of Rosenbaum. This is where Gage Grosskreutz is involved, and he is about to explain why he unholstered his gun in this clip. Let's watch.
Today, the jury will show new drone video of Rittenhouse shooting and killing Joseph Rosenbaum. A crowd chased and confronted Rittenhouse as he fled that scene. Then Rittenhouse shot and killed another protester before wounding Grosskreutz. Rittenhouse claims he was acting in self-defense. His attorney questioned Grosskreutz's actions leading to the shooting.
When you were standing 3 to 5 feet from him, it wasn't until you pointed your gun at him, advanced on him with your gun, now your hands down, pointed at him, that he fired, right?
Correct.
Now, of course, in order to use the defense of self-defense in a court of law, you need to show that there was an imminent threat, right? And in this case, with Grosskreutz unholstering his weapon, you could argue, obviously, that Kyle Rittenhouse, who was on his back at the time, was dealing with an imminent threat. Now, let me give you a few more details, Cenk, before you jump in. So Grosskreutz, 27, testified that he unholstered his gun on August 25th, 2020, as he and a crowd followed Rittenhouse, who had just fatally shot Joseph Rosenbaum. Rittenhouse fell to the ground, fired twice at an unknown person, and then fatally shot Anthony Huber. That was the second individual that he fatally shot. Grosskreutz, just feet away, put his hands in the air, videos show. He then saw Rittenhouse re-rack his weapon, a motion that loads it for gunfire. He testified, so that's what he claimed. He said this: re-racking my weapon, or I'm sorry, re-racking the weapon in my mind meant that the defendant pulled the trigger while my hands were in the air, but the gun didn't fire. So by re-racking the weapon, I inferred the defendant wasn't accepting my surrender. On redirect, though, he clarified that he did not intentionally aim at Rittenhouse. At any point during the encounter, did you intentionally point your firearm at the defendant? Prosecutor Thomas Binger asked. No, I did not, he responded. But clearly you can see in this still shot from the video, it's a little blurry, but you can see that's Grosskreutz with the gun pointed at Kyle Rittenhouse just before Rittenhouse had shot his weapon. Cenk.
Okay, so there are two separate issues here. One is the actual criminal case. Does he have good defense for self-defense? The other is a moral component of the story. Who's right, who's wrong morally? So on the shooting of Grosskreutz, he's going to have a very good self-defense case, right? So I'm not positive that picture is that you could tell from that angle that he's pointing it directly at Rittenhouse. It looks that way in the picture, but every picture is slightly misleading because of the moment that it's taken, and you can't tell which way his arm is moving and exactly which way it points. But honestly, it's irrelevant, okay? That right there is good enough, and the testimony is good enough, very likely for Rittenhouse to get off on that charge, okay? And I would say rightfully so, okay? But with a giant caveat that I'm gonna get to in a minute, okay? Now remember, he's the one that survived. The other two that died, Rosenbaum and Huber. I know that Anna talked about it in a previous show, but looking at those videos, there's a couple of things that are clear in terms of Rosenbaum. He had just gotten out of a mental health clinic, and he did rush at Rittenhouse, and he threw a plastic bag at him with things in it, right? And there was a gunshot nearby. So Rittenhouse is going to have a self-defense case there too. It doesn't mean he's going to win on that one. If somebody throws a plastic bag at you, and you hear a gunshot, I don't know, a lot of people might say, yeah, that's definitely self-defense. And a lot of people would say, no, it's a plastic bag, and he had no idea whether somebody was shooting at him or not. His back was turned to Rosenbaum. He had no idea if Rosenbaum had a gun, but he shot him 4 times anyway, right? And then in terms of Huber, this one we knew all along. Huber hit him with a skateboard, and I've always thought, no, I would never murder someone for hitting me with a skateboard, right? Now, I get it. They're in the middle of a crazy situation there and protests, etc. At the same time, Rittenhouse is the one who purposely put himself in that situation with a gun. And that's going to get to the moral case. But if I was on the jury, I'd pay a lot of attention to the Rosenbaum part and the Huber part, and I would have a very much an open mind. And I would hear all of the evidence, etc., to see if that qualifies for self-defense, and it might depend on the law of the state, right? So now, having said all that, now let's go to the second part, the moral part. To me, it's as clear as it always was. There's only one fact here that's different than what I knew before, which is that today, Grosskreutz said basically that the gun was pointing near Rittenhouse or at Rittenhouse, right? So there's a little tiny bit of confusion there, but it's not material. So that's new, right? And in the videos that we saw originally, it was not clear that Grosskreutz, to me at least, had a weapon. So that's all new stuff. So on for me, so that stuff is very impactful on his actual criminal trial, especially when it comes to Grosskreutz, right? On the moral issue, it is not at all impactful. The guy goes into a situation that could be volatile with a weapon. Everyone who was there with a weapon that was on the right-wing side was looking for trouble. They couldn't wait for trouble. They couldn't wait to use their weapons. Like the stores that they're theoretically guarding, they don't know anything about. They're from different states. It's not their community. And the stores are boarded up. The owners aren't there. They aren't protecting anyone. They just can't wait to shoot. That's what Rittenhouse was doing. So in terms of sympathy, do you have any sympathy for Rittenhouse? Zero. He's a terrible person who did a terrible thing. He went into the middle of that protest looking for trouble. He found it. And the minute someone threw a plastic bag at him, he started killing people. So whether he is found criminally liable for that is going to be a matter of all of the evidence in the state jurisprudence and direction that the judge gives, etc. And by the way, the judge is still wrong. He said that these guys must be called rioters, looters, and arsonists. One of them was a paramedic. There's no evidence that any of the victims were rioters or arsonists or looters. The judge is almost lying there by allowing that. So given the judge's proclivity, God, Rittenhouse looks like has an excellent chance of getting off. But it says nothing about his moral culpability, which I think he's just as guilty as he ever was.
Yeah, to me, the thing that's standing out the most about this case, not necessarily the trial of Rittenhouse, but the entire situation that unfolded that night, was the lack of trust in police authorities to do their jobs appropriately, because the militia members who showed up armed, regardless of what you think of them, felt that they needed to be there to protect the community and to protect local businesses. I agree that showing up puts yourself in a dangerous position, and Rittenhouse as a 17-year-old, really, I mean, I get it. He previously had worked in that community, supposedly as a lifeguard. I'll take that at face value, but we are not supposed to allow vigilantes to just like rush in and carry out or enforce what they believe to be the law, right? We're supposed to rely on our police, on police authorities, law enforcement to do their jobs. But whether you're on the right or the left in this particular case, no one trusted the cops to do their jobs. I mean, you watch testimony, you watch video of these militia members, and they're just like, yeah, we just saw communities burn down and we felt like we needed to go in and control the situation. It just creates a dangerous environment. And one other thing that's also clear to me based on reporting that's come out ever since the situation transpired is that the cops like intentionally grouped, like they pushed both groups together, like in one area, knowing that that could lead to an increase of violence, it could lead to a violent situation. And that's exactly what happened here. Yeah, go ahead.
And I'll go further than you, and I'll even disagree in a little bit here, because I blame the police almost most of all. But with a slight distinction here. I think the militia's totally guilty. I think everyone who went down there, again, I'm talking about morally, everyone who went down there with a giant weapon that was showing, etc., went down there looking for trouble. And in their ideal world, there was gonna be a damsel in distress or a store owner in distress, and they were gonna get to kill people. That's why they went, that's why they went. That's why they go every time, looking to kill black people, left-wingers, etc. So and the idea that the police are what? Too lenient towards black people in America, it's just beyond absurd, okay? On the other hand, the police were terrible because they encouraged the militia. It's seen in the tapes over and over again. They push the protesters towards the armed militia. They thank the armed militia. They give, like literally give water to the armed militia. Kyle Rittenhouse at the end tries to surrender to the police after killing 2 people, and the police don't even arrest him because they assume, oh, that's a white guy with heavy weaponry, so he must be one of us, a good guy who's looking to kill black people or protesters, etc. The fact that they didn't arrest him when he surrendered was unbelievable, and it goes to show you, but at the same time completely believable, because it goes to show you the mindset of cops in America. If you're a right winger and you shoot people, we don't really care. We won't even take you in when you're trying to surrender afterwards. We encouraged you ahead of time, and we don't hold you accountable afterwards, right? So now, guys, just it, if 10 heavily armed black guys went into the middle of a right-wing protest, cops would be on them instantly, and they would arrest all of them, they would crush them, and maybe even murder them. We all know that, you all know that. These guys walk around looking to kill people, and the cops are like, yeah, go get them. So screw the cops in Kenosha, Wisconsin, who are definitely guilty, and because of their raw right wing, go get them and do violence, I think caused the deaths of these 2 people. But I'll blame one other group. If you're on the left, don't bring guns, don't bring weapons. Okay, there were some that had brought weapons. What are you gonna do?
Can I actually jump in? Can I jump in on that, Cenk? Because I do have some details on that I think are relevant as well, and it does have to do with Grosskreutz, the 3rd person who was shot that testified. You saw the video earlier. We're also learning that he was carrying, and by the way, Cenk referenced that there were paramedics there. Grosskreutz was there because he's a paramedic, and he claimed he was there to help anyone who might be injured. He had a weapon, but it wasn't licensed for concealed carry. Grosskreutz also acknowledged that he incorrectly told police last year that his firearm had fallen out of his pants that night and did not admit that he had a weapon at the time. He also said that he had only minimal information about Rittenhouse or his prior actions at the time of the shooting. And yes, he had a weapon with him for protection, but he did not have a license for concealed carry because that license had already expired. So you have two sides. Obviously an incredibly hostile situation. You have cops that are, in my opinion, stoking the flames of that hostile situation, and both sides are armed. And it's a recipe for disaster. And then you add the Rosenbaum part of it. He was someone who was just released from a mental health institution. He was clearly not in the right frame of mind. And honestly, his behavior is what really sparked the shootings to take place. Right? We have so many issues in this country, and what you had in that night was a dangerous cocktail of many of those issues simultaneously.
So I'm not trying to blame the victims here, because remember, the two guys who are dead, Huber and Rosenbaum, one had a skateboard, the other one had a plastic bag, okay? So Grosskreutz, who did not die, did have the weapon, but there were other people that had weapons there. If you're a left-winger and you go to a protest with weapons, your chance of getting killed is about 100 times higher. If you're a black left-winger and you're going in with a weapon, your chance of getting killed is about 1,000 times higher. The minute police see a black man with a weapon, they're gonna start shooting. The minute they see a white man with a weapon, they're gonna start cheering. Like, we don't know that in America already? Of course we know that, right? So don't put yourself in danger. You think you're protecting yourself? The minute you draw a weapon, you're 1,000 times more likely to die than if you didn't have a weapon in the first place. Right? And so why did Grosskreutz get shot? Because he pulled out his weapon. If he hadn't pulled out his weapon, well, if he'd rushed Rittenhouse, Rittenhouse was shooting everybody anyway, right? But so he might have gotten shot anyway, but he might not have. And he certainly, if he stayed away from Rittenhouse and didn't have a weapon, he definitely wouldn't have gotten shot. So everybody has to use decent human judgment, but we've lost track of that. And a lot of people can't wait to get into fights, including with weapons. I want to read one member here because Gabby's making a great point. Gabby Marita said, even if Rittenhouse gets acquitted via technicality in this criminal trial, I hope the families of his victims, yes, they were victims, absolutely bury him in civil litigation for the remainder of his pathetic years on this planet. Now, look, the part I'm not sure I agree with is, I'm not sure that if he gets acquitted, it would be on a technicality.
Right.
It depends on all of the evidence, and it depends on the state laws. Certainly the gun being pointed at him in that case, not all three, but in that case, is not a technicality at all. That would just be self-defense, right? So, but on this civil litigation point, you make a great point, because in a criminal trial, guys, remember, it has to be beyond a reasonable doubt that he definitely was not doing self-defense and that he shot and killed them intentionally. Well, again, some of the laws are not necessarily intentional, but the first charge he's charged with is intentional homicide, right? So, but in a civil case, you don't need to be beyond a reasonable doubt. So think about beyond a reasonable doubt to be like a 98% certainty, right? In a civil case, you just have to be 51% certain. So there, he could be held civilly responsible. And certainly if my family member was Huber, I would sue, and I would definitely think that he was civilly responsible. Okay, you get hit with a skateboard, that's bad. It doesn't mean you should murder the guy.
No. All right, well, we got to take a quick break. Let's do that. And when we come back, NPR has uncovered audio from NRA officials following the tragic shooting in Columbine. And what they think about their own supporters is pretty fascinating stuff, pretty insulting as well. So we've got that story and more when we return.
All right, first programming now, Ben Jealous and the King family, Martin Luther King's family, are gonna be on the conversation tomorrow. That's at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Nina Turner is going to interview them, so make sure you check that out. Amazing interview for you guys tomorrow, live at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, right before the main show. All right, let's go to our members. Vicky says, whoa, me too, Booster kicked my butt. Fine yesterday, but tired and sore today. Get better, you two. Thank you, we appreciate it. And yeah, look, my wife and I took it at the same time. She didn't have any effects. It just depends on the situation. And she had Moderna before, I had Johnson & Johnson before. So you don't know, but don't worry. I'm gonna say one quick thing in case you guys don't know it. The vaccines do not have a microbe or a virus in them. What they do is they trick your body into reacting as if it got hit with a virus so that it builds up its defenses. But the actual thing is empty, so there's no microbe or virus. That's why you're not contagious. You can't get anybody else sick from a booster shot. So, and you're not actually in danger. It's just your body reacting as if you were in danger, okay? So important to know that. Cool science teacher says, yay, Cenk and Anna are back. Thank you, cool science teacher. Spicy Tuna says, here's a crazy idea. Leave your damn guns at home. I couldn't agree more. Here's an even crazier idea. Don't have guns. You're much more likely to get shot and killed if you have a gun, period. In Ingibingi 2000 in YouTube super chat writes in, hey, I was sick today too. Upset stomach, don't think it was COVID. Feel better than this morning. So get better. Parker says, question for Cenk and Anna. How crazy is it that you all have been back in the studio for 6 months? Today's like a flashback episode from the lockdown days. Totally, that's how I feel. I feel like we're back in, is this 6 months? It's probably even longer than that, right? But when we used to do the episodes all the time, there was so much uncertainty. I always felt like I was like in a bunker under like duress and etc. Now though, I feel like, oh look, I'm doing a show from home.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah,
I'm enjoying it.
Flamingos in the back, you're having fun or whatever those things are.
Errands, Cenk.
Errands, sorry, my bad. Okay, yeah. All right, Eduardo Perez says, can I get a happy birthday shout out? If not, it's okay, I love you guys. No, I'm kidding.
Happy birthday,
Eduardo. Now, Twitch. Okay. Jackie's a new sub. We like new subs on Twitch. That's great. We like new subs everywhere. You see on YouTube, and we now have that very shiny green things going, join down here, over here. Okay. Progressive change.
I like subs.
You like subs? I like subs.
Italian subs.
I had a turkey and bacon one just yesterday.
Nice.
Double bacon, you know me. Anyway, Progressive Change Now writes in, yay, Cenk and Anna again. Crazy A1 gave 500 bits. I don't think that's crazy. I think that's sane. And says, Cenk and Anna back, Pog.
Yes, Poggers.
And allegedly, Allegra says both this and the Arbery case involve right wingers attacking, then claiming self-defense. Yes. On TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Anna has news, I have reactions.
All right, let's do it. The NRA referred to their most avid supporters and activists as hillbillies and fruitcakes during a strategic meeting following the shooting in Columbine. Now, we'll get to that audio in just a moment, but we're learning about these new details after NPR obtained 2.5 hours of audio from this meeting that took place immediately after the Columbine shooting in 1999. The tapes were recorded secretly by someone who took part in the meetings, and that individual who wishes to remain anonymous for obvious reasons shared the tapes with NPR. Now we're gonna go through some of the notable moments here, beginning with the main topic of conversation during this strategic meeting, which was in regard to an upcoming conference for the NRA. That conference was to take place about a few days after the Columbine shooting happened. And so, I mean, obviously there were some NRA officials who were concerned, including NRA lobbyist Jim Baker, who was particularly worried about how the optics would be if they went through with that conference. So let's hear what he had to say.
At the same period where they're going to be burying these children, we're going to be having media within 10 miles of our convention center, the world's media, trying to run through the exhibit hall looking at kids fondling firearms, which is going to be a horrible, horrible, horrible juxtaposition.
Now, again, that's Jim Baker. He is the NRA lobbyist, and the point he's making is certainly a valid one. But there were members of this meeting who certainly disagreed with him, including Tony Marcus, who is an NRA PR consultant. He said this: "That's one very good argument, Jim. On the other side, if you don't appear to be deferential in honoring the dead, you end up being a tremendous S-head who wouldn't tuck tail and run, So it's a double-edged sword. So the argument here is, I don't know, maybe we should go forward with it because canceling the conference could make it appear as though we feel guilty or claim some responsibility for what happened in Columbine." Jane.
Yeah, the reason that you would feel that way is because it is that way. So it's not like they're like, oh, there was a shooting at a school, lots of kids died, so we're going to blame Star Trek. No, they're going to blame the thing that makes sense, which is that the guns killed them, and you encourage kids to have guns. In fact, you saw right there, you heard with your own ears him saying, if the press comes to our convention, they're gonna see kids fondling guns. He literally said that. Why? Because they know, look, that's their internal meeting. They think nobody's listening. They know they're encouraging kids to get guns. That's why they're so worried. My God, if they find out that we're the ones encouraging this, it's gonna be a problem. But to be fair to the NRA, I gotta say, in an emergency situation like that, they did amazing PR and spin control here. And it, as you're gonna see here in this story, they got themselves out of it brilliantly from a political perspective, and it wound up being a thing that they used over and over again to evade responsibility.
Now, someone who comes up quite a bit in the reporting here is an NRA strategist by the name of Marion Hammer. And she is, to put it lightly and generously, insane. She's also against canceling the conference, and she makes it clear by stating, you have to go forward for the NRA to scrap this and the amount of money that we have spent. And at that point, she gets interrupted by Wayne LaPierre, and he tries to make a point about how they have meeting insurance, meaning if they end up canceling the conference, it's okay. The insurance that they have will basically reimburse them for the costs of the event that they're now canceling. And what was fascinating is how she responded to Wayne LaPierre. So in this next clip, it's gonna start with Wayne LaPierre, and then you're gonna hear Marion Hammer continue her argument in favor of keeping the conference, not canceling it. Let's listen.
We have meeting insurance.
I just screw the insurance. The message that it will send is that even the NRA was brought to its knees, and the media will have a field day with it.
All right, let me.
Brought to its knees, the media will have a field day with it. Look, I think that the strategy here is very similar to what we saw from Donald Trump. Refuse to ever take any responsibility, deny, never apologize, and just steamroll ahead. And that's the strategy that we've seen from the NRA since. And unfortunately, it has worked, it has been successful. And remember, the whole point of that conference is to sell more guns because the NRA is an organization that is heavily funded by gun manufacturers. There is a profit motive behind what's taking place here, despite the amount of people who get shot in mass shootings. And also keep in mind that the Columbine shooting, which ended up killing 13 people, injuring 20 others, was the first mass shooting since the 1960s. So the country had not yet been as desensitized by mass shootings as it is today.
Yeah, this is where I say they were brilliant. And then there's actually a very surprising twist about the gun manufacturers in this story too. But we'll get to that in a second. But the brilliant part was they decided, no, let's go over the top and Charlton Heston came up with this and said it in his speech. let's blame the other side and say that they're playing politics with kids who have just died. Well, that totally worked. So number one, I've seen political polling that shows apologizing moves about 3 points. So it means that it does no good for you. But what it does with the rest of the folks when you apologize is that it reinforces that you did something wrong. So I don't know that they had access to that polling. They certainly never talked about it in that call. I know they didn't have access to the polling that I saw, right? But their instinct of not apologizing, unfortunately, in politics is correct, okay? Now, secondly, when they turned it around and said, you're politicizing it, well, my God, that worked like a charm, because guys, remember, they're not trying to prove themselves innocent. All they're trying to do is manufacture doubt. And they know with the mainstream media, all you have to do is say anything and they'll turn it into 50-50. So the minute the NRA said, oh, you're politicizing it, the media went, oh, I can't tell. I can't tell who's right or wrong. I can't tell if it's the guns that killed the people or the people politicizing the guns that killed the people. Was it blueberries in Star Trek or was it the guns? I can't tell. And so they've used that strategy now after every mass shooting, and it's worked every time.
Well, there was another moment during this strategic meeting with NRA officials where they discussed the possibility of providing the victims some sort of fund, right? In order to, obviously they're doing it for positive PR. As NPR notes, in those private moments, the NRA considered a strikingly more sympathetic posture toward mass shootings than the uncompromising stance it had taken publicly in the decades since, even considering a $1 million fund to care for the victims. Now, one of the people who was in favor of this is NRA official Kane Robinson. He wanted to create this victims fund, and the PR consultant Tony Marcus makes another appearance speaking out against it. Let's listen.
Is there something concrete that we can offer, not because guns are responsible, but because we care about these people? Is there anything, does that look crass or?
Like a victims fund, or
we create a victims fund and we give the victim $1 million or something like that. Does that look bad, or does it look?
Well, I mean, that can be twisted too. I mean, why are you giving money? You feel responsible?
No, well, you're true. It can be twisted, but we feel sympathetic and respectful.
So in the very end of that clip, you hear Jim Baker, again, that's the NRA lobbyist, and he seems to be much more in favor of both canceling the conference, but also providing the victims that $1 million victims fund. But the person who seems to be, two people seem to be the most outspoken against doing anything that seems to either apologize or take any responsibility. It's the PR consultant, Tony Marcus, and also the NRA strategist, Marion Hammer, who will make another appearance later in this segment. But in regard to Robinson, Kane Robinson, who wanted the Victims Fund, you can also hear him in the audio saying this: don't anybody kid yourselves about this great macho thing of going down there and showing our chest and showing how damn tough we are. We are in deep crap on this deal. And so anything we do here is going to be a matter of trying to decide the best of a whole bunch of very, very bad choices. And again, we know which direction they went in. Obviously, do not apologize, do not take responsibility, steamroll ahead. And so any thoughts on that, Jake, before we move on to Marion Hammer's comments on NRA activists?
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to them insulting their own activists so you know what they actually think of you. But I also, again, want to say their views on Congress and gun manufacturers are super relevant, so keep going.
All right, so we're gonna get to their views on Congress in just a moment. But here's Marion Hammer, the NRA strategist, essentially telling the world, or in this private meeting, telling them what she genuinely thinks about the most avid NRA supporters and activists.
If you pull down the exhibit hall, that's not going to leave anything for the media except the members' meeting. And you're going to have the wackos with all kinds of crazy resolutions, with all kinds of dressing like a bunch of hillbillies and idiots. And it's gonna be the worst thing you can imagine.
I didn't say it. She said it.
Yeah, so look, that's what they think of you. If you're an NRA member, the elites in the NRA think you're wackos and hillbillies and idiots. You know, sometimes right wing catches massive feelings when we call them idiots, but it turns out your own leaders think you're idiots. And that's 10,000 times worse because we're fighting against you guys, whereas they're tricking you. They think, oh, these guys will lead to good profits, get a bunch of wacko hillbillies in here and we'll sell them a lot of weapons. They'll die, but who cares, right? And so now you know what they think privately. Is it going to change your mind? No, you're going to listen to a right-wing media show. You're going to get brainwashed into thinking guns are awesome and that they protect you. And then, and then unfortunately for some of you, that'll be your demise.
And then finally, let's talk about Congress because the system of legalized bribery has been a problem for quite some time. Lobbying has been a problem for quite some time. And the NRA has exploited that system for its own benefit. So here's what their discussion regarding Congress sounded like. They discussed conservative politicians and gun industry representatives as largely inconsequential players, saying they will do whatever the NRA proposes. Members of Congress, one participant says, have asked the NRA to, quote, secretly provide them with talking points, end quote. And so, look, obviously none of that is surprising to us. We see how the sausage is made day in, day out. But it is very nice to see them admit it on tape for what, like the billionth time? I mean, this is a different context with different players, but how many videos or how much tape have we shown this year alone involving lobbyists for massive corporations indicating that they're just buying politicians left and right? It's just the most obvious thing in the world.
Yeah, so first of all, on Congress, this is classic Washington. So even back then, 1999, the NRA basically lobbyists saying, oh, don't worry about the Congress members, they're puppets. They're puppets, okay? And so the idiots are panicking, they come to us, and then we give them talking points, and then they're happy. They talk about Tancredo, they talk about senators, they name specific people who called who are in a panic. And they say, oh, don't worry, we're gonna give you schmucks your talking points and your stupid checks. They didn't mention the checks and the calls, but that's obvious and implied, okay? And then you'll do as you're told. So all these, by the way, again, I blame the mainstream media in this case because they treat the politicians with such reverence. Like, what does the senator from Oklahoma think? He doesn't think a damn thing. He's waiting for the NRA lobbyists to tell him what to say because he's a stupid puppet, okay? Don't have any respect for these elites in Washington. So now look, but in a sense, you also see here the NRA leaders are kind of directing traffic, right? Hey, we got to, and they think everybody's idiots on their own side, right? We got to use the useful idiots who are the guys who buy the guns, and we have to have our puppet idiots who we control in Congress. But now the NRA is a lot more radical than even those tapes indicate. So what happened? I think there was some degree of audience capture, just like there is today in social media with online hosts. I think that those guys that they called wackos and hillbillies were such an important customer base. They kept appealing to them and they became more and more radical over the years until they became the wacko hillbillies. And so now they say outrageous things after mass shootings. And they blame, they're not just manufacturing doubt anymore, they're aggressively turning around and blaming the people who are actually trying to solve it and saying that it's their problem. And then finally, the gun manufacturer part was also interesting because in parts of the tapes, it seems like the gun manufacturers are not that important to the guys at the NRA. Like the members of Congress, they treat them like, oh, we'll tell them what to say. And I was surprised by that because I would think that the gun manufacturers are the ones that are paying them and hence they would have more power. But later in the tapes, you see that it's the gun manufacturers basically asking them, like, what should be our talking points? So then you realize, oh, the NRA is just the marketing arm for those gun manufacturers. So the gun manufacturers are almost calling their employees and saying, hey, how do we market our way out of this so we can sell more guns to the wackos and hillbillies? And the NRA is here to please those masters.
Yeah, of course, exactly. We got to take our next break. When we come back, we'll talk about Paul Gosar, a US congressman who is spending his time posting edited anime videos threatening members of Congress on Twitter because there's nothing else to do. The country is just running perfectly. Everything's wonderful. We've got that story and more when we come back.
All right, I got tons of comments for you guys. Let's do it. Let's go to the members first. Jazz Mavis says, "All right, Bart, got the swing thing going again." Okay, good. Swing music first. Tall Glass of Shut Up Juice says, "Fran and company did fantastically yesterday, or maybe fantastically, but I'm super happy you two are feeling better and back." Trey Dora says, "Seriously, Fran and David did a great job in the first hour. Really enjoyed their commentary." Here. Diana Free Spirit says, "When we were in lockdown, I always imagined Cenk broadcasting from his laundry room and sitting on their washer or dryer. I found it rather endearing." Well, Diana, you have no idea how close to right you are. My washer and dryer are right there, okay? They're not in this room, but they're right behind the wall. That's why sometimes people in their house will run the washer and dryer when I'm on, especially during old school. I'm like, no, we're on air. But even if people in the house are like, it's old school, it'll be fine. Anyways, No More Trigonometry says, "The NRA and their talking points have brainwashed millions of people and done irreparable harm to this country." I think that is indisputable. New Young Turks members, Sue Hargrave and Julia Martinez just joined by hitting that join button below on YouTube. If you're on a mobile phone, you got to scroll down a little bit more to see the join button. Sue and Julia, are you guys American heroes? Well, that's also indisputable. We're trying to bring a little bit of truth to the world. And as you saw there with the Kyle Rittenhouse story, we care about the facts. So a lot of people just go pick sides and they're gonna twist the facts to meet their agenda. As you'll see in the bonus episode, the story we do about Jimmy Dore, it's devastating. I mean, obviously manipulating facts to suit his agenda. We don't do that here. So we share the real facts with you guys, no matter how it falls out. All right, Waldorf Nation on Super Chat says, "My dad came down with COVID. Thanks God, he's double vaxxed and is recovering nicely. Vaccines work." Here, Jeff, great to hear that comment. And glad to see that your dad's doing better. All right, Mark Ajayi writes in, "Thanks for all that you guys do, especially when the mainstream media never makes attempts to push back. Cenk, loved your interview with Ro Khanna the other day." Mark, thank you for saying that, I appreciate it. By the way, Ro was great to come on, and he did vote the wrong way. He was not part of the 6 Just Democrats that voted no, he voted yes. HXC Mike says, "To be fair, Cenk, they definitely blamed a lot of unrelated things for Columbine. Maybe not Star Trek, but Dungeons and Dragons, video games, alternative or alt rock music, the Matrix movies." You're right, they did. I'm surprised they didn't throw Star Trek into that list. Chaplain Fred says, "Glad to see you both back. Praying for you, even if you do not believe." We appreciate it, Chaplain Fred. LOL, Francesca and David did an amazing job yesterday. Please keep it up and help us navigate through all this nonsense. Fred, you're amazing, thank you. Whereas Fubu says, "Nice haircut, Cenk, looking so good today." And you as well. Indeed.
Thank you.
Back on the best news show on the planet, Cenk Uygur, Kasparian, Casper, forward.
Twitter has flagged a tweet from Republican Congressman Paul Gosar that depicted the anime killing of Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It also showed an attack on President Joe Biden, which means that it went against the terms of service for Twitter. Here's a little look at what the tweet looked like with the, well, that's the video that was embedded, but I wanted to go to the video first. I'm sorry, the graphic first showing how Twitter had flagged it, but decided to keep the tweet up because they believe that it serves a public interest, or the public would be interested in seeing it. Now, with that said, the video that was embedded is what we're gonna go to next, and I'll explain to you guys what's happening in the video. So let's take a look at that. So in this video, Representatives Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert are depicted as heroes from this Japanese anime series known as Attack on Titan. The post-apocalyptic series revolves around a small civilization that lives in a bordered off city to protect itself from giant human-like creatures called Titans. Ocasio-Cortez's face is then superimposed on one of the Titans, who is killed by Gosar's character. His character also attacks a Titan with Biden's face on it. So that's what we're looking at right now. And I just want to remind everyone that this is a Republican member of Congress in his 60s. We're still in the middle of a global pandemic. We're in the middle of supply chain issues. We're in the middle of a lot of chaos right now. But Paul Gosar would rather spend his time tweeting ridiculous anime videos like that. And then of course, as soon as he's called out on it, minimizing the fact that he is inciting violence, making light of harming other members of Congress who happen to be his political opponents. It's just, this is what they do. This is what the Republican Party has been reduced to.
Yeah, I was gonna make an analogy about like, if I put out a video, and just like the same way anime, etc., decapitating Ted Cruz, the outrage that would come from the right wing would be legendary. Oh, like this is what the Antifa people do, the liberal fascists, okay? And and they would cry and cry and cry. And by the way, rightfully so. Like, don't show people getting decapitated or killed, etc. Right? Then I realized I don't really need the analogy. Kathy Griffin actually showed a decapitated Trump head, which obviously was not real. With QAnon people, you have to clarify everything, right? Okay, Kathy Griffin did not actually kill Donald Trump. He's still alive. And they went nuts, and they banned her, they canceled her, etc. Now that one looked a lot more realistic. So keep it real, right? And I didn't think that was a good idea either. And so, but the selective outrage, when anything is done to the right wing, oh my God, they didn't wish me Merry Christmas. Every Democrat has to apologize to me. When they show Democrats getting, Anna, to your point, it's like a 60-year-old guy killing a woman in her, I think she's still in her late 20s, maybe early 30s at this point, just killing her, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna kill that girl, right? And they think like, oh, what? You can't take a joke? I guarantee you, if I say one joke about you guys, you'll all crumble and cry for months.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, this has been the type of treatment that certain representatives like Ocasio-Cortez have been dealing with, and there have been absolutely no consequences whatsoever. So in response to this, AOC tweets, so while I was en route to Glasgow, a creepy member I work with who fundraises for neo-Nazi groups, which by the way is true, shared a fantasy video of killing me, and he'll face no consequences because GOP leadership cheers him on with excuses. Fun Monday. Well, back to work because institutions don't protect women of color. She also says, remember when Yoho accosted me on the Capitol, at the Capitol, and called me an effing, bitch. Remember when Green ran after me a few months ago, screaming and reaching. Remember when she stalked my office the first time with insurrectionists and people locked inside, all at my job and nothing ever happens. Which is true. I mean, look, Marjorie Taylor Greene has been stripped of her, committee assignments because of other awful and anti-Semitic things she's said. But in terms of treatment of other members of Congress, it seems like Republicans tend to get a pass. And one more tweet from Ocasio-Cortez. She says, "This dude is just a collection," this is my favorite part, "of wet toothpicks anyway. White supremacy is for extremely fragile people and sad men like him, whose self-concept relies on the myth that he was born superior because deep down he knows he couldn't open a pickle jar or read a whole book by himself." So that was her reaction to it. Nancy Pelosi, House Speaker, on her part has really done nothing, put out like a strong statement about how this is unacceptable, but okay. But it's not really up to Pelosi, right? It's really up to Republican leadership to set the tone here. And they really refuse to do anything about this kind of behavior.
So there's a couple of facets to the story. First, you never see anybody going after Steny Hoyer, right? He's actually the #2 Democrat in the House. You'd never know it. Why? Because Steny Hoyer, first of all, totally agrees with Republicans and secretly helps them kill every good provision in any bill. So they're not interested in attacking Steny Hoyer because he's a corporate Democrat like they're all corporate Republicans. But secondly, because it's not fun killing a guy in a white male in his 70s. But for the right wing, they get off on attacking women of color. They do. The younger the women are, the more they are attracted to that kind of violent imagery. Okay, and if you remember, this is the same thing that the immigration officials did at the border, and recently we did a story about how they weren't punished at all, right? And so there's something about AOC and young women of color that drives these right-wing men crazy and often with sexual and violent imagery. And there's something wrong with them. They should get mental health counseling. Okay, now secondly, why GOP leader in specific, that Twitter handle is referring to Kevin McCarthy. That's his handle now, because he's the leader of the Republicans in the House. And Kevin McCarthy, of course, is not going to do anything about Paul Gosar because his entire caucus is now turned to violence. So then they'd say, wait a minute, well, how about Matt Gaetz and Cawthorn, who are all constantly talking about the Second Amendment, and if the government officials come to your door, kill them, and all these different things that they're implying or sometimes flat out saying. And aren't you gonna do anything about that violence? That's a more direct threat of violence. No, he's not gonna do anything about that because now over 30% of Republicans think that they should do violence. He's not gonna go against, he's not gonna take out half his caucus, and he's not gonna go against 30% of his base that says, let's start killing him. So anime is the least of McCarthy's problems. The Republican Party has turned violent and they're not gonna go back. And they're not gonna condemn each other for all agreeing to violence.
Which tells you everything you need to know about the Republican Party and its failed leadership at the moment. And what's also fascinating is the fact that Paul Gosar's own family on multiple occasions has come out to speak against him. In fact, on this particular issue, Gosar's own sister made her rounds in the press and just straight up called him a sociopath. I wanna go to that video, that's video C3.
Yes, Allison, it definitely is getting worse because no one holds him accountable. And then this is something that I have to openly wonder, does he have to act on it himself before we believe that he's a sociopath? And what's more, we know from everything we have seen, and certainly Attorney General Garland has seen much more of it than I, that there is evidence to show he was in a conspiracy to commit treason against the United States of America. Where is the accountability?
I have to say, she makes a point about the DOJ refusing to get involved in any of this. And I think that's a good point. I mean, remember, Trump isn't the one in charge right now. President Joe Biden is, and he's got a cabinet full of people that he has himself nominated and gotten confirmed through the Senate. I don't really understand, I don't really know where Joe Biden is, to be honest. I don't know what the DOJ is really up to. And the special panel investigating the riots on January 6th, all I can really do is roll my eyes at everything that's been coming out of that. All of the focus has been in the wrong direction, and all of their consequences for individuals who have completely ignored subpoenas have been weak And I think I'm being generous in calling it weak. I would use other language that I'm not even allowed to use on the show right now. So I just, the weakness and the pathetic nature of the Democratic Party also does not really give me a lot of confidence that anything will be done about this kind of situation.
So this story actually is a good look at both parties and what's wrong with both parties. So there's Paul Gosar's sister, and all of his siblings have come out against him on numerous occasions, saying, "Look, you guys don't get it. He's part of our family. We know he's mentally unbalanced. Somebody should do something." But Republican voters see someone who's mentally unbalanced, and they think, "Attaboy," like that. To them, they're like, They don't see the problem. They're like, that's the feature, not the bug. And so, I mean, you name it, the party leadership is filled with mentally unbalanced people. Donald Trump, just take any of their thought leaders, such as they are, Ted Nugent, whatever, you can go on and on. Rudy Giuliani, obviously mentally unbalanced. And Republicans look at that and go, yes, finally, someone as nuts as me, yes, right? There's something deeply wrong with the Republican Party. Now, to the Democrats, to Anna's point, why doesn't DOJ do something? Well, they tried to do something when people were threatening to kill school board members. The Republicans called in the Attorney General and yelled at him, Merrick Garland, and Merrick Garland cowered. And then I guarantee you, Anna, that they got scared. Oh my God, don't hold the Republicans accountable if they threaten to murder people. You get yelled at on TV. So then now they're like crying in a corner and can't do anything. And that weakness is a great example of what the Democratic Party has become.
I gotta be honest, it's really hard not to despise the Democrats. I mean, their weakness knows no bounds. Their failure to actually carry out their own promises to the very people who have elected them knows no bounds. Just one disappointment after the next. Their weakness is pathetic. Now, I want to move on to another kind of related story because it has to do with death threats coming from Republicans. And in this case, it is a Republican congressman who's dealing with death threats because he voted in favor of legislation that Biden promoted. So let's talk about that. Republican Congressman Fred Upton is getting death threats for voting in favor of the bipartisan infrastructure bill. In fact, he's not the only Republican who did so. There were over a dozen who voted in favor of the bipartisan infrastructure bill in the House. And of course, in the Senate, there were 19 Republicans who also did the same. That's something that Donald Trump is not in favor of because he sees that as providing Joe Biden a win for his reelection campaign. Now, keep in mind that corporate donors loved the infrastructure bill because there were all sorts of corporate giveaways in that bill. So, you got these Republican congressmen between a rock and a hard place. What do? Do they serve their corporate donors or do they serve their daddy Trump? Well, Fred Upton decided to serve his daddy, not his daddy Trump, but decided to vote in favor of what his corporate donors want. And now he's suffering consequences for that. Let's hear the kind of threats he's getting. This is a voicemail that he shared with CNN.
Traitor. That's what you are. You're a piece of traitor. I hope you die. I hope everybody in your family dies. You piece of trash mother. Voted for dumb. You're stupider than he is. He can't even complete a sentence. You dumb mother. Traitor. Piece of mother. Piece of trash. Hope you die. Hope your family dies. Hope everybody in your staff dies. You piece of traitor.
Now, for members of Congress, a voicemail like that is incredibly jarring. For people like me and Cenk, a voicemail like that is called Tuesday. Something that we deal with on a regular basis, but that's not to minimize what he is dealing with these death threats. In fact, he claims that this became an issue after a member of his own party, Marjorie Taylor Greene, had tweeted out the names of the Republican Congress members who voted in favor of the bill, and she also included some phone numbers. Here's one of the tweets. She says 13 Republicans voted with Pelosi to spend $7.5 billion to build EV charging stations all over America, to force Americans to drive battery-driven cars. As CCP, of course, is a reference to communist China. China dominates the EV battery market by over 80%, and the US can't even compete with less than 10% market share. I think maybe that's an issue with what we decided to invest our resources into, Marjorie Taylor Greene. You can't complain about how we can't compete with China when we refuse to compete with China and invest in renewable energy. But nonetheless, after that, she had shared the phone numbers and the names of the Republican congressmen who voted for the bill, thus leading to the type of voicemails that Upton received. Cenk.
Yeah, look, we needed a populist uprising against corporate rule, but my God, the first part of the uprising has turned into a total S show. I mean, insanity. Lunatics have taken over the asylum. So they're like, oh, yeah, okay, Upton's a corporate Republican. I can't stand corporate Republicans and corporate Democrats, but that doesn't mean you should threaten to kill them, you lunatics. How about you just vote them out of office? That would be great. And I don't agree with the populist right on social issues at all. I find them repugnant, and I don't think they really believe in democracy. I'm worried about their violent tendency, all those things, right? But if you want to get rid of corporate Republicans by outvoting them in your primaries, have at it, Hoss. That is an American way to proceed, right? But this threats to kill people. It's vigilante justice, it's brown shirt behavior, it's Gestapo-like stuff where you purposely egg on your supporters to do stochastic terrorism. And by the way, the right wing think that they're clever. They've now learned that in order to evade responsibility and culpability, criminal culpability, you don't say I'm going to kill you. You say I hope you're going to die. I hope your family's going to die. So we see that every day. Right, in the comments, right? So, and it's not clever. You're still talking about violence. You're still threatening it. You're still trying to unsettle people, and you're a monster. You're a monster. Anybody who says, "I hope your family dies," no matter what the circumstances are, is a verifiable, terrible, evil person. Okay, like for example, I can't stand Kyle Rittenhouse. I would never say, "I hope his family dies." What an insane thing to say, right? So I wouldn't even say I hope he dies. Of course I wouldn't say that, let alone his family. That's because the right wing is deeply immoral. Okay, now, but this also goes to show you the difference again between the Republicans and the Democrats. Because while Marjorie Taylor Greene is effectively bullying any faction of the Republican Party that won't agree to the most extreme elements, she docks their phone numbers of her colleagues, Republicans, not even Democrats, Republicans, right? Meanwhile, Democrats are so scared to criticize their own. So like the 6 just Democrats who voted no on this last bill, and oh my God, the world has collapsed in on them. All of them, how dare you vote against the master leader Pelosi? This is a crime against humanity, right? I mean, and so they're justifiably like unnerved, Jesus. Like, and all they did was vote their conscience. They didn't even say anything bad. They didn't criticize the other guys. They didn't call them out for corruption, which they definitely should. They didn't put out their phone numbers. You see the difference? And by the way, the Marjorie Taylor Greene stuff is deplorable. But in terms of actually putting a spotlight on people doing things that you think are wrong, does that work? Of course it works. But our side won't even use the tamest version of that for political reasons, strategic reasons, while the other side uses it in the most extreme way possible.
It's okay, Cenk. Our side trusts Biden, so everything's gonna be okay. I do wanna go to one other part of Representative Upton's interview with CNN, because I found this portion of their exchange fascinating. Pay close attention to how Lindsey Graham gets thrown under the bus. Let's watch.
You know what? It's a real step back. Thank goodness it wasn't a constituent. But I have a colleague, as you know, that put out the phone numbers of the 13 of us that voted that way. Be glad to defend that vote. And we've been working really since last spring on a bipartisan bill. I think he might have been from South Carolina. His own senator, Lindsey Graham, couldn't find a closer confidant of President Trump than Lindsey Graham in his 4 years. Lindsey Graham voted for it. It passed 69-30 in the Senate.
No, I love that moment because it's like, oh, thank God this guy wasn't a constituent of mine, but he is a constituent of Lindsey Graham's, and he voted for the bipartisan infrastructure bill too. Get him. No, he didn't say get him, right? But it was just kind of fascinating how he starts off with, thank God it wasn't my constituent. but the constituent lives in, state that Lindsey Graham represents. One other thing I wanted to note, this is just my whole take on the entire situation playing out. Look, when you are in a political environment where the conversation, where the discourse is not really about substance, it's not about policy, it's about manufactured culture wars, it's about cults of personality, it's about all this garbage that's very specifically meant to distract voters from the substance, from the fact that the economic situation is as dire as it is because both parties are beholden to corporate interests. This is what the society devolves to, okay? This is all tribalistic nonsense because the person who sent that voicemail isn't really looking at what's in the bipartisan bill. He's not fired up about the amount of spending. He's not fired up about, privatizing public infrastructure. That's not what he's concerned about. He is taken in by Trump's cult of personality. To him, that is all politics is at this point. And honestly, it's not his fault because politicians make politics about this, right? Because they don't want you to focus on their corporate donors. They don't want you to focus on the fact that they have no solutions to better your life, especially Republicans. When was the last time Republicans had policy that was meant to better the lives of their own constituents? The only thing they accomplished under the Trump administration was tax cuts for the rich. They're beholden to corporate donors more than Democrats are, and Democrats are pretty bad themselves, right? And so again, this is what the conversation turns into. Cult of personality, tribalistic BS, rather than, hey, what's in the bipartisan infrastructure bill? What is my problem with the bipartisan infrastructure bill other than the fact that my daddy, Donald Trump, doesn't like it?
Yeah, no, Anna's spot on here. Look, there's good things in the bill like expanded broadband access. Is that why the guy wants to murder a Republican official? We're gonna have more broadband. I can get on the internet easier. I'm gonna kill you. No, he doesn't care about the policy at all. Is he upset about legitimate things you can be upset about in the bill? I mean, as Anna's pointed out, the stock market is sky high now. Why? Because those stocks are through the roof. This is the corporate backed bill. We told you the corporations are ecstatic. You could legitimately be upset about that, but why would you murder Upton? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And if you're upset, you should be upset at the donors, not at their tools, their puppets, which are the politicians. But by the way, don't go trying to physically threaten the donors either. For God's sake, keep it political, keep it American.
Yeah. Well, that does it for our first hour. We're gonna take a brief break, but when we come back, we actually have a little more on this story, specifically Mark Meadows' reaction to the death threats. And later on, we will talk about, let's see. Elon Musk is curious about the genitalia of someone who just wants him to pay a little more in taxes. We'll got that story and more when we come back.
You know what the progressive movement needs? It needs a little energy, a little pizzazz, maybe a little caffeine. Oh, coffee. But what if it was Too Strong Coffee? Yes, new TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT. Look, this helps progressive causes. It's also organic and fair trade, so you've got peace of mind that it was done right, and it happens to taste great. So check it out right now at TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT.
300 million is a pretty good number, Well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day. We looked at you like, are you nuts?
Young Turks has just passed another milestone. 15 billion views.
Damn.
All right, lots of comments. You guys are the best.
I'm gonna read a few comments from our members.
Mr. Methuselah says on YouTube, super chat, thanks for all the important work you do for TYT for the movement.
Do you know who had the first super chat when I got back from vacation? You won't be surprised to find out. Rob Shively. What do you know? Rob says, rejoice, for Dragon Daddy has returned.
This question sent to us by Izzy Sanchez Jr. Is it me or is Meghan McCain talking as fast as Ben Shapiro? Is that the way the right tries to look smart and intellectual? Well, yes.
Michael Nathan writes it on Twitter. Did Anna choose Cenk's outfit today? I'm sure it wasn't Cenk himself. Man Bun Jenkins Skinny Jeans says, so now Anna has pointed out, okay, that's his handle.
T. Joyce, 1971, saying Donald Trump is good at pulling out of things, NAFTA, the Iran deal, NATO. It's just too bad Fred Trump didn't.
All right, let me do a little quick plug here. It's not even a plug, I'm bragging, okay? I'm bragging, watch me. We have a channel on YouTube, a whole channel devoted just to the Young Turks. It's badass, right? Wow, man. I can see the void.
You guys are rock stars.
Unbelievable. Senator Sanders, welcome to Rebel Headquarters. Man, you guys are amazing. We gave you what you wanted. Okay. Speaking of shirts.
I have a surprise.
You reached a lot of people. You are the Young Turks. And we have spread that progressive message wide and far. Let's keep it going.
Here's what we do. We go beyond the headline. We are willing to engage in transparent conversations with those who do not think like me. We also make sure that you know what's happening not only nationally, but in your local area. Make sure you tune in to Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, Monday through Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time.
Cool news, shoptyt.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're gonna be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course! Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's a fantastic story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream.
Thank you very much.
Back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Pittman BCP, who just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. That's a smart choice. TYT.com/join. Do you become a hero? I guess. Bring some positive change in the world, do some good, right? Let's do it together. All right, Casper.
All right, well, Trump's former White House chief of staff, Mark Meadows, is calling out the 13 Republican congressmen who voted in favor of the bipartisan infrastructure bill. In fact, he's going so far as to say that these individuals should be punished by GOP leadership. Here he is making the argument while speaking to Steve Bannon.
You saying, sir, that you would strip these people of their committees?
Absolutely. Listen, they stripped Marjorie Taylor Greene of her committees for not even voting against the Republican Party. These people voted for Joe Biden for an infrastructure bill that will clear the way for more socialist spending that, quite frankly, gives Joe Biden a win. I don't know how you can send a clearer message than saying, listen, obviously you're not on our team. We're going to give that leadership position to somebody else.
Okay, listen, we're gonna get to the topic at hand in a minute, which is the proposal to punish Republican lawmakers for voting the way that they wanted to vote on the bipartisan infrastructure bill. To say that the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which is a corporate giveaway, is somehow socialist spending is hilarious. There are some provisions that do some things for some people, like expanding broadband internet and all of that. But it's $550 billion of new spending. There are provisions that would privatize public infrastructure, which I don't know, maybe I'm remembering my Marxism incorrectly, but that doesn't quite qualify as a socialist program. But this nonsense messaging coming from Republicans doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, right? What matters is that they're good at putting the messaging out, and they are good at putting that kind of messaging out. And Republicans are incredibly forceful in doing so, whereas Democrats refuse to really message appropriately, persistently, and accurately. Like Democrats are just a complete and utter mess, and they're being labeled as socialists when it comes to a corporate giveaway bill. It's amazing, Jane.
Okay, Anna, look, it's understandable. You missed it. It was chapter 17 of Das Kapital, where Karl Marx talks about privatizing infrastructure so that the capitalists can justly make more money on public roads. I can't believe you missed it. That's just a huge part of Marxism is capitalists running giant corporations making more money off the public. Okay, it's absurd. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Socialist doesn't mean anything anymore. It's just a generic word they use. Oh, now they're giving out candy at Halloween. Socialists, right? Or they're not giving out candy at Halloween. Socialists, right? So when you hear socialists, understand from a Republican or a right winger, understand that they're purposely, well, they're partly being a dumbass, but really they assume you're a dumbass that doesn't know the word, doesn't need to know the word, and they can just use it as a boogeyman and you'll never look it up. Okay, so now, and he says about Marjorie Taylor Greene, like she didn't even vote anyway, and they stripped her of her committee assignments, neglecting to point out that the reason they stripped her of the committee assignments is because she said there were Jewish space lasers that burn our forests. Cuckoo, cuckoo. Okay, so now, but the most important part is this. Look, when he and the other extreme right wingers or the populist right wingers, if you want to be super fair to them, say, hey, there should be consequences for this vote. We should strip the people who did not vote with our party from their committee assignments. I don't think that that's a out of bounds political strategy. Yeah.
Breaking news, Cenk Uygur agrees with Mark Meadows. This is Wolf Blitzer. This is not actually breaking news, but I'm gonna pretend like it is. Cenk, back to you.
Okay, yeah, I mean, later the New York Times will pretend that I was best friends with Mark Meadows, and that's the only thing I've ever done in my life. Okay, so anyways, look, by the way, do the Democrats do that? Yeah, they do, but for the exact opposite reasons. And that you never see in the news, okay? They will threaten progressives' committee assignments. This happens very regularly, guys. I have direct knowledge of this, okay? They threaten committee assignments of progressives if they don't vote for corporate-backed bills. And if oh my God, if a progressive ever said, hey, we're doing this because a corporation just paid Kristen Sinema $1.2 million in campaign donations, they'd be stripped of all their committee assignments. That person told the truth. That person criticized one of our own for honestly and correctly for being corrupt. That's it. If you're not corrupt in the Democratic Party, they will take away all your power. So that is politics. Mark Meadows is just saying it outwardly in the open. And on their side, they're using it to go more populist instead of going more corporate. Now, the Republican Party's entire point of existence is to help giant corporations. So this is an amazing marketing job by the right wing, amazing, right? But they understand that the country wants populism. They hate the establishment. So they have brilliantly captured the populist mantle, making the Democrats look like the elites. Now, there's a lot of truth to that 90% of the Democratic Party are elites who are corrupt politicians. But 100% of the Republican Party is corrupt politicians. But yet, the Democrats have once again, the serial bunglers that they are, have lost this marketing battle. And now it looks like the Republicans are with the average man.
It's amazing. It really is incredible stuff. All right, we do have to go to another quick break. But when we come back, we're gonna also talk about one of my favorite stories of the day, which is Dennis Prager either being incredibly stupid or pretending not to know that gay individuals were demonized relentlessly during the AIDS epidemic. We've got that story and more when we return.
Back on TYT. Love Dr. 7277 in our member section. TYT.com/join. We read your comments. We do the show together. Okay, if you're a member. He or she wrote in, these people should not be members of Congress. They have no moral principles. To which I reply, of course. But on the other hand, like that's how they got there, by having no moral principles. So Dragon with a Girl Tattoo said, at what point do these threatening videos / messages become legally actionable? Can they be sued for threatening people? Look, I'll tell you real quick a story that I had with cops. Somebody had sent a threatening messages to a sheriff, and they were pretending to be me, okay? So the cops came and talked to me, and when it was a cop who was being threatened, there was a world of pain coming for that guy. They were doing a massive investigation. I said, well, funny enough, I have very similar threats to me. And they were very polite. And they're like, oh, yeah. We get leads, working around the clock on that. And then there was no follow-up. No one cared. So it depends on how much power you have. If you don't have a lot of power, nobody's gonna follow up on it at all. And there's not gonna be anything legally actionable. On the other hand, if you do have power, then yes, then you can go after the people threatening you. Okay, so keeping it real. And they skate through the laws by saying, I hope you die, instead of saying, I am going to kill you. Christian Andrade wrote in on YouTube Super Chat. Thanks for keeping it real. Would appreciate a nugget of wisdom for these hard times. What do you got? Much love. Keep up the good work. That was hard to understand, Christian. I love that you wrote in and thank you for the super chat. But if you're saying, hey, what's a good way to keep going? Brother, we're gonna win. I know that it's super hard times and it doesn't look like it. And I get more frustrated than anybody else. But the good news for you guys, I can see the future. And there are things that we can do and we will do to win in the future. And again, remember, almost all the young are on our side. So that's one of the later chapters in justiceiscomingbook.com that you can pre-order. It will actually arrive at some point. Andrew Ullman says, wouldn't Hawley consider anime as part of what's leading to the degeneration of the moral lives of men? Excellent.
Oh, we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that later.
Exactly, exactly. So hold right there. Smart audience, love it. Kyle Walton writes in on Super Chat, isn't this a federal felony, charge and remove in terms of Gosar? That would require strength. There's no way Gosar is gonna be removed. No, none. TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT though will remove a groggy morning and will replace it with the kind of energy that you see from me, okay? Helps the progressive movement, gives money to it. TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT tries the new flavors. Citrus, the espresso blend, etc. Going to Twitch, Zappa Hart says, hey, 7 months of Bezos bucks, helping my favorite news show. Love all of you guys, right back at you. RJ Goodness says, celebrate good times, come on. I agree, I don't know why I agreed to sing it, but there it was. Ghost Rider's a new sub, we like new subs. Thank you, Ghost Rider, for doing that. Simply Devin says, TYT is the only honest news outlet, thank you. Right back at you. We couldn't do it without you guys, so thank you. Queen Faye, Jackie, Mark Melbourne, Chris Huggy, Brother Mucker, all give. On TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Casper, forward news.
Conservative talk show host Dennis Prager made a pretty wild revisionist claim comparing anti-vaxxers to the 80s AIDS crisis. He pretended as if he didn't know that gay individuals in this country were demonized relentlessly during the AIDS epidemic. And so here he is making this ridiculous claim.
If we survive this as a free country, historians will just ask, how did this happen? How did people get governed by irrational fears? Whether it is of the non-vaccinated who are the pariahs of America, as I have not seen in my lifetime, any pariah group like this. During the AIDS crisis, can you imagine if gay men and intravenous drug users, who were the vast majority of people with AIDS, had they been pariahs the way the non-vaccinated are, then it would have been inconceivable, and it should have been inconceivable. They should not have been made pariahs. But yeah, this is kosher. This is okay. You can make the non-vaccinated. So it's a different America.
Yeah, I actually can imagine them being treated as pariahs, because they were in fact treated as pariahs. Something that I would venture to say Dennis Prager is pretty aware of, but either he's pretending not to know the truth, or he has memory loss, or is incredibly dumb. I don't know, but either one of those options, not so great. Let me tell you what the reality is. Prager's alarming revisionism compares some Americans who refused to be inoculated during a public health emergency to people who were denied medical care, ostracized by society, and demonized under homophobic administrations and public policies that once defined AIDS as a gay plague and gay-related immunodeficiency disease. In fact, TPM's Josh Marshall continued to set the record straight, saying, indeed, gay men with AIDS were such pariahs that a big vehicle for AIDS action was the tragic story of a young boy named Ryan White, who died of AIDS. White was so key because as a child who contracted AIDS, I believe through a blood transfusion, he served as a symbol for the tragedy of AIDS while being blameless, because gay men were A, pariahs, and B, were seen by many as having brought the disease on themselves. I know I shouldn't be shocked, but good Lord, this is quite a take from Prager. And by the way, gay men are still ostracized by certain things. So gay men still unable to donate blood and plasma despite new FDA guidelines. Here's why. And of course, it's the same kind of thinking that dates back to the AIDS crisis.
Josh Marshall also made another great point where he said, there's another giant difference here where in the AIDS crisis, gay men were desperately trying to seek medical care, and the government wouldn't sanction funding for that medical care. In this case, we're trying to give medical care to the right wing, and they're like, oh, I don't want it, man. I don't want your stupid medical care. So that's a giant, giant difference. So, but I'm genuinely curious whether Prager has like early onset dementia, or if he like goes afterwards and goes, wah! Because how could you not know that gay men were ostracized and treated as pariahs? I mean, it's not like Prager is a spring chicken. He lived through it. So, right. I mean, I lived through it. Anna, you might not remember as much, but like I
don't think I was born. I was born in '86, so
okay. Well, it was in that ballpark, right? Yeah, you were too young. So like, there was such mass paranoia. They're like, oh, you can't go where gay people are gonna go. They sit on the toilet seat and you could pick it up from the toilet seat. Mike, based on nonsense as usual. And by the way, who led that paranoia? Conspiracy theories, as always, the right wing. Okay. And so now he's like, oh, the unvaccinated are treated like pariahs. Because guys, I know it's hard for you to comprehend, but in this case, the disease is spread through you breathing on people, talking near people, singing near people, etc. Right? In AIDS, it was spread through bodily fluids. So if people with AIDS went around throwing their bodily fluids on people, yes, they then would be treated as pariahs. Like, wait, don't throw your bodily fluids on me. I can get AIDS that way. Or if non-gay people did that, right? But they didn't. They were like, please help us. Please give us medical care. In this case, they're like, oh yeah, we're mouth breathers and we're gonna breathe all over you. I don't care, man. That's not being a pariah. It's being a jackass.
Yeah, and look, if I can recall correctly, one of the first moments of our former colleague, Dave Rubin, flipping over to the dark side was through Prager University, right? Where he claimed he was leaving the left because He was so tired of the oppression Olympics that was taking place among the left, right? He's talking about various disenfranchised groups of people and what they've experienced through systemic racism or sexism and homophobia and all of that. And it's just really fascinating to see Dennis Prager engage in oppression Olympics, claiming that individuals who refuse to be vaccinated are being oppressed by society, that they have been made pariahs, such pariahs that it pales. I mean, what the gay community went through in the 80s pales in comparison to what these poor anti-vaxxers are experiencing. I mean, come on, just give me a break, really.
My favorite part was like, what he kept saying over and over, could you imagine if they did this during AIDS?
Yeah, we can imagine. We can imagine.
Yeah.
What a doofus. Anyway, all right, well, let's move on to other doofuses in the news today. The tit for tat with Chris Christie and Donald Trump continues. So Donald Trump is not pleased with Chris Christie, who of course was a Trump loyalist until he decided to criticize Trump following the January 6th riots in the Capitol. So what Trump has done is release a statement in response to Christie's criticisms. And what were those criticisms? Well, let me give you Christie and then we'll get to Trump a little later. Christie had said the following: we can no longer talk about the past and the past elections. No matter where you stand on that issue, no matter where you stand, it is over. Every minute that we spend talking about 2020, while we're wasting time doing that, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Nancy Pelosi, and Chuck Schumer are laying ruin to this country. We better focus on that and take our eyes off the rear view mirror and start looking through the windshield again. So that was the statement that Christie had made. And really, he's not the only one. Republicans are trying to shift the focus away from the 2020 election and this lie that it was stolen from Donald Trump. Christie also emphasized that without Trump in the spotlight, Republican candidates are, able to connect with voters more easily. He said this: people want us to be direct with them. Because Chris Christie is really known for being direct with his supporters or with Republican voters. He also says they want someone to fight for them, but they want them to fight in a way that doesn't hurt their ears. We have to speak to their dreams, their hopes, their aspirations for the future. If we don't do that, then we don't once again win back the votes that we began to win back in Virginia and New Jersey last Tuesday night. Now, in comes Donald Trump, not very pleased with this. Of course, he calls Chris Christie a rhino, Republican in name only. And he also adds this: Chris Christie, who just made a speech at the Republican Jewish Coalition in Las Vegas, was just absolutely massacred by his statements that Republicans have to move on from the past, meaning the 2020 election fraud. Everybody remembers that Christie left New Jersey like a less than 9% approval rating, a record low, and they didn't want to hear this from him. And I mean, let's just clear the record, I guess. Let's fact check Trump. It's not like it looks really good for Chris Christie anyway, but his record low was actually 14% according to RCP, and it dropped after Christie was seen chilling at the beach during the lockdown. So there's that. But Christie, look, Christie's not a good guy. Trump's not a good guy. It is kind of enjoyable to watch them go at it like this.
Yeah, so Chris Christie's a funny guy because he's so political and brazenly so, and the mainstream media loves him. He's like the kind of greasy, old school politician that they can't get enough of. So Christie makes these comments, why now? Because Youngkin, the Republican who won in Virginia, distanced himself from Trump and didn't lose, he won anyway. So Chris Christie thinks, ooh, there's political space to critique Trump a little bit so I can keep my media job and get paid a lot of money. And you start to tell the Republican audience, you could vote for someone other than Trump with the same message, wink, wink, right? So no profile encouraged here. The coward comes out when he thinks it's a slightly safe space for him to come out against Trump. And then Trump, of course, bitch slaps him down and goes, hey, Mr. 9%, who the hell do you think you are? Now remember, Christie was a sad schlep who thought it was politically advantageous to suck up to Trump after he lost him in the 2016 primary, and he'd stand behind him like a goon in all the press conferences, like, and he gave him his establishment credibility by standing behind him like that.
Yes.
And he mistakenly thought that he was going to get picked as vice president. And then Trump was like, no, you schmuck, don't you know me at all? All I ever do is pump and dump. I tell you guys, oh yeah, I'm gonna get, so you're gonna be in such great shape, you're gonna get an important position, either vice president or attorney general, and then I dump your stupid ass. You're a bunch of suckers and losers. And Chris Christie's like, oh, I didn't get any positions. He cried about that for 4 straight years. And then of course, mainstream media sees him, ABC. They look at him and they're like, oh, you're a slimy politician who tried to take advantage of Trump but couldn't? You're hired. As long as you give tiny little critiques of him. This is how the game is played.
Listen, one of my favorite things to see play out, and I've seen it many times, is when the chickens, they come home. And Jake, what do they come home to do?
I think that it's roosting. I'm going with roosting.
Yes, the chickens do come home to roost, Chris Christie, and all of the other Trump loyalists who made their beds and now find themselves sleeping in it, right? 2 cliches in one comment. I think I've gone overboard. I apologize for that. But no, I love to see it. I love to see it. And let me just make one other note about Youngkin's win in Virginia. So while it is true that Youngkin didn't lean on Donald Trump to win in the general election, this is for the gubernatorial race, during the primary, he happily took Trump's endorsement and did not distance himself from Donald Trump. So I say that because in regard to appealing to Republican voters, Trump is still a favorite. He just is. In regard to appealing to some independent voters, you might want to distance yourself from Trump in a general election, right? So I just find it hilarious that Chris Christie sees like a tiny bit of an opening, and this is how they are, right? You think these lawmakers are thicker than thieves? Hell no, they'll turn on each other at the drop of a hat, like in a second. And that's exactly what you see with Chris Christie and other Republican lawmakers. Love to see it.
Yeah, I love to see it too. And since this is a story about politicians being self-serving, I'm going to be a little bit self-serving. Did you guys know that there's now super thanks on the videos? So if you like a video or you like something in the video, you could actually donate through the videos that you're watching. It's right below the video. And so if you like me doing Chris Christie impressions, that's one way to go. Or if there's anything where you go, damn right, I want them to speak for me. The super thanks also lets us know, oh, they like that material. I don't mean just like jokes, of course not. I mean more substantively. Then that allows us to give you more what you like. So thank you for doing that. It's right below the video. And I appreciate Chris Christie giving me an opportunity to do that.
All right, well, we're gonna take a quick break. And when we come back, Senator Hawley is just really concerned about video games and pornography. He has a pretty low view and perspective of his own supporters. So we've got that and more when we return.
All right, first of all, I'd like to denounce and reject Eatwood Mac on Twitch, who photoshopped a picture of me of a man bun and skinny jeans. So that's a reference to one of the ADIs where a user has that name and we read the comment. It is a disastrous looking picture, although I think I look like some sort of Hawaiian politician. Anyways, but no, in all seriousness, I love the community, and so have at it, Hoss, and keep having fun. All right, let's go to YouTube Super Chat. Jason Ray says, I just wish the exact same company that makes a dewormer would create a vaccine just to watch the right wing eat themselves. Rogan would eat a horse. That would be hilarious if they're like, Pfizer says this vaccine helps you with coronavirus, but it's also a dewormer. They're like, what do I do? Which button do I press? Okay. Brooke Louise says the new Pfizer pill claims to cut COVID down by 89%. I'm wondering what you guys think about that. Will it change the vaccination debate? Absolutely, Brooke. That's my opinion. So that pill is going to hit the market. There's a Merck pill and a Pfizer pill. The Pfizer pill does, that study seems to be very much real, 89%. The pill helps a lot, and it's after you get it, so it does. Even if you're not vaccinated, the folks can take the pill afterwards. It's even better if you are vaccinated. I think COVID as a pandemic and as a discussion point ends in around March when that pill comes out. I don't want to talk about it. They make us talk about it by being insane, right? Like, I'm tired of the mass. I'm tired of the stupid debate. I'm tired of them being jackasses. I can't stand it anymore, so it can't come any quicker. And plus, I want to travel. I want to go to the movies, etc. They're insane that they think that we like any of this. So, all right, now let's go to actually a programming note first, guys. After bonus episode, which is going to be, that's where we're going to do the Jimmy Dore lying video, which is really interesting. That's for the members, tyt.com/join. After the bonus episode, go to twitch.tv/TYT for Woznia. That's Wozni Lambre. He's brilliant. He's incredibly funny. Make sure you're checking that out. And then tomorrow on the conversation, Ben Jealous and Martin Luther King's family going to talk to Nina Turner. Make sure you're checking that out 5:30 p.m. right before the main show. And if you'd like to be a content creator or other jobs at TYT, go to tyt.com/careers. You can start making videos for us. It's amazing, it totally works. By the way, people in that program, David Schuster came out of that program. Right now, if you go on Rebel HQ, not only can you see David, you can see Adrian Lawrence. Richard Ojeda, here comes Ojeda, he's killing it there. So make sure you're checking out Rebel HQ. All right, I'm going back to the members, and Robin Hudspeth said, I'm so stoked, I got my new cable box last night and just spoke into my remote, TYT, and the current show's playing, and sequel with excitement. I love it, there you go. You can say or type in TYT almost anywhere and you'll get us. Be right back. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. I have no comments. Let's go to Anna.
All right, let's do the next story.
I think what the left is doing is attacking America. They're saying that America is systemically oppressive and men are systemically responsible.
That was conservative Republican Senator Josh Hawley, the faux populist who pretended to care about the economic anxieties of Americans, when in reality, he's just another repackaged conservative who's worried about porn and video games. That was the message that you would hear from his interview with Axios. In fact, it was pretty embarrassing, to be quite honest with you, and give you a little look into what he thinks about men today, in particular men who might vote for him. Let's listen.
As conservatives, we've got to call men back to responsibility. We've got to say that spending your time not working, and we have more and more men who are not working, spending your time on video games, spending your time watching porn online while doing nothing is not good for you, your family, or this country.
So a viewer's watching this and they're thinking, really? What the liberals are doing are going to push me to watch Pornhub more or play Donkey Kong more? Do you mean that literally?
Well, what I mean literally is that I think the liberal attack, the left-wing attack on manhood says to men, you're part of the problem. It says that your masculinity is inherently problematic. It's inherently oppressive.
Now, look, I would venture to say that someone who's genuine in wanting to respond to the economic anxieties of Americans would not manufacture the next culture war. But of course, that's exactly what Josh Hawley is doing here. And I also just want to note that, he talks about people men who need to get back to work, right? This was a message that was also uttered by Elaine Chao, former transportation secretary under the Trump administration. And what they're really talking about is the labor shortage. We're seeing it in various sectors of the economy. It's leading to supply chain shortages. They just want you guys to go back to the mines. And it made me think about the John Deere workers who are currently on strike. And about 40% of those strikers identify as Republican voters. And so when it comes to these economic issues, when it comes to accumulating power as workers in the workplace, that is not a partisan issue. You got Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, liberals, progressives. They see how broken our economic system is. They want change. But what you'll get from politicians like Josh Hawley, who pretends to be a populist, is more and more of this manufactured nonsense culture war. I would love to know what Josh Hawley does during his free time. Because while he's passing judgment on men who like to let loose and enjoy themselves by playing video games, for instance, I would venture to say that he probably engages in activities that we would find pretty unsavory as well, including fundraising among corporate donors who allow for politicians like Hawley to rig the economic system against us. Cenk.
Okay, so let's analyze the critique of men from the two different camps, okay? So now, does discriminating against men overall make any sense? Of course not. I'm a man, I don't want to be discriminated against. Is there legitimate critique of men that you could make? Of course there is, right? So for example, the great majority of crimes are committed by young men, that's a fact. So now let's look at the two sides. One side says historically men have been in charge and have used that. And by the way, logically so, if you have power, you want to keep power. You don't want to share that power. And they didn't want to share it with women. So they would say, for example, you're not allowed to work. You have to stay at home and just serve me. Your whole point of existence is to serve me. And you have no freedom, you have no independence. These are from the freedom guys, right? But not for women. Historically, that's what happened. Now, we're halfway past that, but there's still a lot of that hanging around. And so is that a legitimate critique? Of course. Have men aggregated power in this country historically? Well, I mean, women weren't even allowed to vote until 100 years ago. All 46 presidents have been men. We can go on and on. These are based in fact, right? And you want to get past that. And very slowly we're getting past that. Now, the right-wing critique as presented by Josh Hawley there of men is, you guys watch too much porn and you play too many video games, and my corporate bosses are telling me you guys are bums. I think men are lazy bums who like to play video games and do what to porn. So how's that for a critique of men?
No, it's amazing. It's amazing because I would love to see the data, right? Like, what is he referring to specifically? Like, what data set is he pointing to reference that men are just spending all day spanking the salami to Pornhub? Like, I want to know. And the thing is, he just made it up. He just made it up. And by the way, you want to look at porn consumption in the country and where it's more prevalent. It tends to be in the Bible Belt. And I'm not passing judgment here. Whatever you do on your free time is your own business. But what he's doing in this interview is passing judgment on men in general, including his own voters, his own supporters, conservative voters, and painting them, defaming them as lazy bums. And it's just fascinating to see how these politicians really view men in society. In an effort to try to defend them, he's really insulting them, and it's pretty gross.
Yeah, so look, the porn and video games debate, I'm very happy to have any day. But the part that should be offensive to men is Hawley and the other right wingers saying, that's why you guys aren't working. You're bums. You're bums. You're not doing anything productive in society. All you're doing is masturbating all day. It's a really sick way of looking at men. And so don't let that slide by. Now, but before I reach a conclusion, I'd like to say that on the issue of porn, look, if Hawley and Shapiro want to take the position of, we are against all men who watch porn online, and we take the position of, we'll take all the voters who actually do watch porn online, we would win elections among men, what, 99 to 1? So have at it, Hoss. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's the
seriously.
worst political strategy of all time.
No, I love it. I love it. Keep going, Hawley. Keep going. In fact, if you thought that was bad, it's about to get worse and even more embarrassing for Hawley. Let's watch.
Is that based on data or based on a hunch?
Well, it's policy over many years. I mean, if you look at the policy of deindustrialization, those are policy choices Mike pursued over many years.
Wait, how does that connect to porn?
Oh, well, if you've got men, 16 million men, Mike, who are idle, who don't have anything to do. Now, partly that's their own responsibility, but also partly it's because jobs have dried up in many cities across America and rural areas too. I think you put together lack of jobs, you put together fatherlessness, you put together the social messages that we teach our kids in school. I think we've got to confront that and its effects.
I love it, because at one moment during this interview, Hawley's like, oh, wait, hold on. I forgot I was engaging in that faux populist grift. I'm supposed to talk about globalization, deindustrialization, but look, bro, you're a US Senator, okay? You're a US Senator. And politicians like Josh Hawley have been in favor of protecting multinational corporations, protecting companies that have shipped jobs abroad to exploit cheap labor in places like China, India, Vietnam, Bangladesh. He loves it. He can't get enough of it. He loves it. So I just love how in the end, I mean, he doesn't overtly take blame, but if you listen to what he's saying, it's the policies that people like him have championed throughout the years that have led to the economic situation and frustration that Americans are experiencing today. Which is why, guys, don't take the bait for the manufactured culture wars. Don't take it. They love it. That's all the right wing has. They don't have solutions. They don't have policy proposals that would better your life. All they have is Mr. Potato Head. All they have is Dr. Seuss. All they have is tut tut porn. We don't like it. Tut tut, you're spanking the salami too often. Garbage, just garbage nonsense. Don't take the bait. Don't take it. Throw it away.
Yeah, so credit where credit is due. I thought Mike Allen did a good job there. Sometimes we critique Axios when they do a bad job, but in that case, he did a great job of following up. Which policy of Democrats has led to men masturbating more online? I mean, come on, really? I mean, they make these points with a straight face. So it was a great follow-up question, and I liked the Donkey Kong reference in a video game. I would have picked something a little bit more recent, but hey, he's old school. Now, when it comes to Hawley,
well, Donkey Kong is actually perfect, especially if you're trying to tie porn and video games. But nonetheless, keep going.
Yes, indeed. And donkey's a symbol for Democrats. I don't know if there's something there. Anyways, so when it comes to Hawley, look. There is a theme they're working on here, and you will see this from other politicians and other right-wing media hosts like Joe Rogan and others, okay? It's all about Republicans are more masculine, man. And you know what?
Let's put up the picture of Josh Hawley just to show you how masculine they are as Cenk is making his point. So that's Josh Hawley kissing his wife like a real man would. Cenk, continue.
Yeah, I kiss my wife with a closed mouth, and she does the same for me. Because real men don't touch lips, okay? And I definitely am not going to Pornhub after this, Josh Hawley says, and I'll be watching straight porn. Anyway, so, all right, but all the fought tough guys of the right wing, they're like, oh man, if you're manly, you don't need a vaccine. Yeah, man, you don't need vaccines for men. We're men. And I think that the reason they're doing the weirdo anti-porn thing, even though every one of their followers watches porn online, is because they probably feel deep shame about that. And they know that their own followers feel shame about it because that's what they taught them. Like, I mean, you want to talk about where it comes from. They went to church, they went to all the political things that the Republicans did. Oh, if you actually, do things that are free with your body, right? Like if you actually exercise freedom, you're a terrible person. You should be filled with shame and disgust and guilt. And that works. And then people are like, oh yeah, the liberals made me do it. I didn't want to go on Pornhub, but the liberals made me do it. And that's why, what did Hawley say there? Then they become dried up.
Yeah, look, anyone who's feeling guilty about masturbation, just don't. Don't let your church make you feel bad about it. Don't let the Proud Boys make you feel bad about it. You got to release the poison, okay? We've seen what happens to men when they're not getting any love from the ladies or when they're not showing themselves some self-love. So you're actually doing your duty, your service to America. It's the most patriotic thing you can do. Do it, let it go. Don't feel bad about it. Let's move on.
Yeah,
that's all I've got to say.
And I can't imagine anything worse than a bunch of pent-up right-wingers who've got energy to release, going around like crazed nuts. So don't buy into the FAP smear, okay?
Exactly. All right, well, let's move on to our next story because, man, billionaires, while they might be powerful and wealthy, they are sensitive. Tesla boss Elon Musk, now apparently the world's richest man, hit Senator Ron Wyden with a vulgar crack on Twitter over the weekend. Now, the comment came a day after Elon Musk launched a Twitter poll asking whether he should sell 10% of his Tesla stock, stating that it would be the only way for him to pay taxes since he doesn't draw a salary. So here's the poll, and wow, almost 60% of the people who participated said that he should sell 10% of his Tesla stock. Now, I'll come back to that in just a second, but Ron Wyden responded to that by saying this: whether or not the world's wealthiest man pays any taxes at all shouldn't depend on the results of a Twitter poll. It's time for the billionaire's income tax. And Musk didn't seem to really like that. So he responded the way a real mature man would by saying, what? I'm guessing he meant what? What does your PP look like? You just came? Okay. So
why does your PP look like you just came?
Oh, why does your PP look like? Okay, I'm sorry. It's kind of hard to decipher what really intelligent and successful men like Elon Musk say in response to, a very real and accurate statement about billionaires dodging taxes in the country. But proceed.
Yeah, and PP in this case, we assume he's profile picture, but who knows? Here's a guy.
Oh, does it?
Yes.
Are you being serious?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's why he's saying he looks like he has an O face, if you will, right?
I thought he was talking about his genitalia. My bad. Okay.
Yeah, but no, but it could be a double entendre, right? Or a double anyway.
Sophisticated.
But either way, look, why are we talking about senators orgasming? What a weird place this has gone. You know why? Because Elon Musk doesn't want to pay taxes. He wants you to pay taxes because he's got to get the government money. By the way, that's part of what funds his spaceships that look like penises. So, and so he's like, I need you suckers to pay as much as you can. But can you imagine? He says it like with a straight face, like, you think I should sell 10% of my Tesla stock? I only have over $330 billion. It's nearly impossible to spend $3 billion in your lifetime. He has $330 billion. He's like, can you imagine the government's making me sell 10% of my stock? They pay taxes like you suckers. Okay, so he does the poll and it halfway works. Like that poll should have been 99-1, right? But they've turned everything into culture wars. There's a point Anna makes often, and it's really exactly right. So he turns into like, guys, I shouldn't pay any taxes, right? Because of the PP. Because of the PP, I shouldn't pay taxes. And a lot of right wingers are like, oh yeah, totally, man. I should pay the taxes, not you, because of Senator Wyden's PP. Okay, and that works. That works with right wingers. It's unbelievable. But even so, he lost the poll. Of course you should pay taxes. That's insane that you're claiming you shouldn't pay taxes when you're literally the richest man in the world. And by the way, a real critique of Ron Wyden would have been if he actually cared to do, he knows he's gonna lose on economic issues. He knows that if he talks about the injustice that they're gonna want him to be taxed. But if he had done a real critique, he would have said, hey, Senator Wyden, you've proposed a billionaire's tax. Can you tell me who killed it? Oh, right, your fellow Democratic colleagues like Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin killed it. So talk about the corruption of the Democratic Party as well as the corruption of the Republican Party, but he would never talk about that because Elon Musk loves that corruption, lives for that corruption.
Exactly. All right. Well, that does it for the show. We have an awesome bonus episode where we're going to call out Jimmy Dore for his vaccine denialism and more. So don't miss it. TYT.com/join. We'll see you there.
The show is gonna be awesome. We're gonna help us over here. Drop it.
We became the first ever daily online web television show.
That was